Our next guest has been called the Queen of True Crime, and her award-winning podcast production company, Audiochuck, is known for its standout content and quality storytelling. She is the creator and host of Crime Junkie, the #1 true crime podcast in the world. Please welcome Ashley Flowers to the South by Southwest studio. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
You have a South by session, and the South by session, which is later, is titled How Ashley Flowers Redefined True Crime Storytelling. How did Ashley Flowers redefine true crime storytelling?
Well, I think for me, it's more about redefining the genre of true crime and taking it from being just entertainment to really figuring out a way to give back. I think of the true crime community as a relationship and really pushing for the fact that it should be two ways, and that if you're going to be creating this content, how do you do it responsibly? How do you consume the content responsibly? And I think that that has really played a huge role in how we create and in our storytelling.
Listen, I've learned a lot. I have friends who do true crime podcasts. I did not know. We're talking about stands. These folks are hardcore, this community. And so do you feel that pressure? Because it doesn't just come from the public, but the true crime stands, they're like, all right, content, right? Follow up, research. Like, how do you please that audience, which is a very rabid audience?
They are, but I think I'm part of that audience, and really having an understanding of what I want from content and from creators, I think has led to so much of our success, because there is a certain amount of follow-up and research that I require from the stuff that I listen to. And so I think by just being that diehard fan, by being so deep in the community, working so closely with family members and law enforcement, has given me more of a perspective than just again, when I started just kind of coming in green.
Okay, before we get to the origin story, right before we started talking, I asked you, do you watch Hulu's Only Murders in the Building? And for those who don't watch, again, there's a makeshift true crime podcast done by Steve Martin's character and Martin Short, but then there's the queen of podcasting done by Tina Fey. When you look at it, are you like, oh, they got it right? Is it like flattery, or are you like, oh, that's totally off?
For her character?
For a creator, when you see them doing it, you're like, looks like my wife's a doctor. She goes, this is BS, but I'm going to go ahead and watch it. When you saw that, you're like, oh, they did it. They got it.
Oh, a little bit. I mean, I think it depends on who you're looking at. I think they played up a lot of like the tropes so well, which is what a character on TV really is. So I thought it was super fun.
You're a fan of it.
I love the show.
You have the seal of approval.
I love the show,
You know, but let's do the origin stories. You know, people don't realize how hard it is to do a podcast. You got to produce it. You got to do the research. You got to edit it and promote it. Take us back to the janky DIY days. How it started.
I love it.
Tell me how the DIY started.
Well, I was a fan of the genre of podcasting. I fell in love with it, and I have been fascinated in true crime for my entire life. So I really, and again, I think this is what shines through, is the authenticity of it. I didn't get into podcasting because it was hot. I didn't get into true crime because it was having a moment. This is what I am most passionate about. And so it really was everything DIY to begin with. I mean, we were editing on GarageBand. We had our like...
So if I can, suppose someone's watching home, you're like, all right, I'm just a fan. I love this. I think, you know what? I want to put this content out in the world. Who am I? I'm just Ashley Flowers, but I have a story to tell. All right, step by step, what did you do? First thing.
Step by step. Well, first I started my business because I knew that it wasn't going to be just a hobby for me. I don't do anything.
You went all in.
Yeah, I go all in. And so I founded the business, gave myself a year. And so once I had all my business paperwork lined up, then I started thinking about the content I was going to create, mapping out the first, 15 episodes or so, trying to get a little bit of a bank because I knew that life happens and I was never going to miss a week. Consistency was so important to me. I had been a listener and I was studying the things that worked, the things that didn't work. And I tried different formats, like over and over for our first episode until I landed on the one that I thought really worked. And then I crossed my fingers and held my breath and launched our first show. And
how many years ago was that?
That was just over 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's what's I think is so beautiful about podcasting. I couldn't have gotten in like that with any other medium, radio, TV, anything like that.
Who's Ashley Flowers?
Exactly. They would have said, who's Ashley Flowers? And I got a chance to prove who I was.
And why do you think Crime Junkie in particular has really resonated? Because the true crime podcast community, right? Yeah. People are crushing it. People are doing really well. And every time there's a new podcast out, you're like, there's no way people will line up and the audience just keeps growing and growing. But throughout the 5 years, Crime Junkie still, has maintained that perch. What do you think you've done that's really helped you? In addition to luck and hashtag
a lot
blessed.
of hard work.
Yeah.
I think that we've stayed really true to our format, which is not a lot of like chit chat. We're really focused on the story. I think that we have continued to evolve throughout the 5 years while still giving people what they came for and what they recognize. We've changed from just doing stories that we could find on the internet that have been covered before to hiring our own reporting team and doing original reporting. So now people are finding stories that they've never heard anywhere else on our platform. And I think we were one of the first shows that really gave listeners an easy way to give back. I mean, I, as the consumer, before we had the show, kept saying, like, this is tragic, this is awful, what can I do? And there really was no what could I do afterwards. And I think we were one of the first shows that gave people very clear calls to action for different cases and causes that they could then get involved with.
So we've seen the positives of this, right?
Yeah.
When you do kind of outsourcing and crowdsourcing of information, people find data and facts that supplement or they shine a light into what law enforcement missed, deliberately or not, right? Exposés. But the dark side here is there's a lot of folks who are not trained. And then you just have a whole bunch of people spreading disinformation. So the ethics behind it, right? How do you maintain the type of the ethical landscape that I'm dealing with real people, real communities? I'm not trained law enforcement, but I have my researchers and I can actually tell this story that really impacts people. And I have to make sure I just navigate that lane that it's not exploitative, and at the same time, I'm not spreading disinformation.
Right. So, when we first started, again, we didn't have a team of journalists. It was just me. And so I was really focusing on the information that was reported by reputable outlets. I wasn't talking about, what was on forums or any kind of wild speculation or rumor. And now we've got our own team of trained journalists who aren't just like, oh, I like true crime, I'm going to go knock on a door. They've been through the ringer. They've gone to school. They've had seasoned careers in this. So I really trust their judgment. And so much, I think, of what has kept us on the straight and narrow is we work so closely with victims' family members. I'm not going to do a deep dive investigation without their blessing. We just released a new limited series called The Deck Investigates, where we spent a year investigating this case in Indiana. And when I started, I reached out to the victims' daughters and I said, I'm not going to do this unless you want to bring this all up again. And I think that that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I think because oftentimes what's forgotten, for the rest of us, right? True crime, entertainment, salacious, murder, death. You see multiple iterations of O.J. Simpson. I'm like, wow, this story will never go away, right? HBO Max has invested in it. There's, Love and Death starring Elizabeth Olsen with the Candy Montgomery, right? We're really fascinated by this, but I think sometimes what gets lost is there's communities, there's family members, these victims. And so how do you think you can navigate it where you bring it up and you say, I want to tell this story, and yes, I'm making money off it, and yes, it's helping my career, but at the same time, I'm really passionate about the story. How do you convince those reluctant family members to come on?
Well, and again, I'm not in the business of convincing anyone. I want to work with people if they see a benefit in it.
So if they say no, you're out.
Yeah, I'm not. Unless we thought the family had something to do with it. There are gray areas. And this is something that, I think we're all still navigating. Unfortunately, the rules for this aren't so black and white.
You guys are writing it right now? You all are writing it as
we're
we go on?
We're figuring it out together. And so I think, again, my gut has just been, there's the victim, but there is never just one victim. Who are the other people who were victimized? And I feel like I can do what I do as long as all of the victims in a story are supportive of what I'm doing and are okay with what I'm doing.
When you get, they refer to you as the queen of true crime podcasting. And 5 years ago, you're DIYing it.
Yeah.
What's that relationship, right? I went from a fan to now the queen. Is it meta? Do you sit there and do you?
It's so weird. It's so stinking weird. Well, mostly
do you have a tiara? Do you have a scepter?
No tiara.
Not yet.
No, never. It's so weird to me. I think because my view of what I'm doing hasn't changed. Again, I feel like I have more resources that I can rely on and pull on, but I I'm still
You
in
have a team now.
I have a team now, but I'm still in Indiana. You know, you still record.
Indiana, all right.
Indiana, us Hoosiers. I still record the podcast alone by myself in a room. And so though the fan base has grown, though the community has grown, so much of what I do on a day-to-day basis feels the same. And so it's very strange to, again, to, like you said, be that fan one day, like consuming, and then be the person who's making the content that everyone is consuming now is wild.
And do your family and friends in Indiana, when you go to them and, you know, for Thanksgiving, or you go to the diners, they're like, I'm the queen.
I have never called myself that. Everyone's very kind, and they came up with that, but I've never called myself the queen of true
How does
crime.
your family respond to this? They're like, oh, this is a nice hobby, or they're like, wow, good for you, you make money off this.
I think that they finally figured out that it's like a real thing.
Took 4 years or 5?
It took 4 years. Even my dad, I think, still doesn't quite get it, but he's very sweet.
It's like, you seem happy.
Yeah, he's like, I'm really good for you. You have a company. That's really nice.
You know, we were talking earlier about we're both parents. And podcasting, because I have so many friends who do it, is exhausting. And you just described how you still record it. You have a kid. How do you do all of this, plus grow out the company, plus take on other podcasts, and still find a way to function?
Well, first of all, I love what I do. So it doesn't drain me so much as it energizes me, because I feel so passionate. I feel like every time I go to work, I'm like actually making a change in the world, which is so encouraging to see as a person, as a mother. Now, like you said, I've got a team. There's no way I could have done this on my own, and they've really helped me scale the business. I also got to a place in the business where I knew I could take it from A to B, but I've just recently brought in a CEO, because I said there's so many other things I want to do, and the time that it would take me to learn that role of a CEO of a media company, I would be doing a disservice to the people who work for my company. And so recognizing when you need help and when it's time to bring in those resources has been critical for me.
So now, you know, it was DIY, and now you have a fire hose of fans and folks pitching you and saying, take this case. How do you all decide which case you're going to focus on?
There's a lot that goes into it. So, you know, if it's a episode, just a single episode, is the research available? Are there people who are willing to be interviewed? With every episode, there's kind of this question of, why are we telling it? Is there a cause? Is there a nonprofit? Is there a call to action? Is to go back to it, what's the point of this? And it's not just entertainment. If it's something like a bigger investigation, we've got to see, you know, is there a there? Who can we get to talk to us? Because again, you need content. You need content, and you need meaningful content. I don't want to sit and speculate for 15 episodes. So there's a lot of just research and seeing what the story is, and if we can make it meaningful. And again, if we're going to tell it, why are we telling it? The why is always so important.
The future of crime fighting. We're at South by Southwest. We think ahead. Do you see podcast hosts and the community, and this community is a serious community, the true crime community. Do you see the future of crime fighting including them?
I don't know necessarily crime fighting. I
just wanted to make a superhero aspect out of it.
Yeah. It's like a cape down the road.
Yeah. No capes.
I think what we're going to be so powerful at, what we've been so powerful at, is getting people to listen and rallying a community. That's something that has, you know, the news is very localized in most places, and I think the beauty of podcasting, which hasn't fully been recognized, I think, by law enforcement. Again, I think about this investigation we just did, and one of the first things that the prosecutor said to us was like, well, who listens to your show? Yeah,
they look down on you still.
Yeah, which is okay, and we've kind of proven now who listens to our show. And I think one of our call to actions was signing a petition. They're sitting on some DNA evidence, and the daughters just want it tested, and showing them that it's not just 3 people, there's 3 daughters who are asking for it, but there's a community of people who are looking at them and asking for it. Unfortunately, a lot of offices, law enforcement, and the prosecutor's office, I always say on our show, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And it's something that, even as I've worked with law enforcement officers, they will say the families that are the loudest, the people who are at our door every week, when we have extra time and resources, that's where it often gets focused. And I think that's how we help as podcasters.
Ashley, thanks so much.
Oh, thank you.
No capes.
No capes. Deal.
Ashley's featured session, Beyond Podcasting, How Ashley Flowers Redefined True Crime Storytelling, is happening today, March 12th at 2:30 p.m. in the Austin Convention Center. Ballroom D. And you can see our complete schedule of upcoming studio interviews on our website at sxsw.com/studio. These interviews are also live streaming during the event on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/sxsw. I'm your host, Wajat Ali. Thanks for watching.